Today is March 2nd, the year 2020. I haven't recorded in a little while. Let me turn the levels down here a little bit so I can get closer. Yeah, that should work. Been thinking a lot about the people I've met and talked to over the last week. Some of the experiences were just really interesting and unexpected. I enjoy the art of conversation. I like to try and be, as worthwhile as possible to interact with people. And what am I really trying to say? I'll just talk about what happened, I guess. Lately, I've been thinking about being in a place of empathy and just understanding for people. And I saw a video today with Russell Brand, and he was talking about how the external addictions and things of that nature, culture, and just ideas in general are just silly. And the point of existence is to just connect and feel united. I agree with this. But I've been in a place like that mentally and trying to interact profoundly with people and give it my full attention. And one person in particular, I talked to him about politics before, and he was very hardline Republican, I guess, and his point of view is as far as personal responsibility and, you can't feel sorry for people. That was kind of the general notion I got, because my thought to him was like, when I let go of all these hard expectations on people and just sometimes people need help. I mean, the thing is, if you actually look into mental illness and trauma, PTSD, and these things that psychology has summed up for us to a point where we can kind of work on things. But truth be told, like, we don't know why we trip out over the shit we do. We have no idea why we do the things we do. We just know that pursuing something feels like obligatory, I guess. I don't even know if that... Let me look that word up real quick. This is how smart I am on the spot. Obligatory. Required by legal, moral, or other rule. Compulsory. Yeah. Turns out I was right. And now you know. I didn't know what I thought I didn't know, but knew. I'm just glad that worked out. So going back to this conversation with this gentleman, when I kind of spewed out my new position on things, he went quick to defend the idea that, essentially, I don't remember his words, but it was basically like, well, what do people need help with, or a less compassionate perspective. And I don't. It was weird. It was weird not to connect like we had before, because I'm having like this moral dilemma of cutting people off just because they're not doing what I think they should be doing. Like, that just seems weird. What does my standards have to do with them? They should be for me. My expectations should be for me, not for anybody else. And I think the problem is that the spoken word about this topic is not yet fully conceivable by the modern mind. I think that we have to be able to think in two different realms at once. Because I feel like that's what we do with Facebook or social media, is we think in that realm about what our next interaction is going to be, or how we feel about a recent interaction. And I think we kind of have to do that with how we feel on the inside about a particular topic. So if you feel that people should be held accountable, that people should be responsible for their part in modern society, and your life doesn't reflect that standard, your vocal position on anybody else's attempt or lack thereof is not necessary, and almost conflictual, because it's like, who are you to tell me? This is the argument between adolescent and middle-aged, right? Is, who are you to tell me how to live my life? Like, that's something we all brush up against with younger generations, is that disconnect. And I think that's just it. It is a rites of passage. We have the right to rebel. The impressions society tries to make on us, we have the right to make a decision, ultimately, to leech or not to leech. That's our decision. And we learn through the repercussions and the potential inevitable disasters that come from that line of thinking. Like, we know that. That's your growing pains. That is what it feels like to survive life, is through that trial period of your spirit. Because you sort of need to know who you are at the foundation of the rest of your life. When you kind of grow into manhood, you now have to figure out, what is my life gonna mean? Like, and it's I know it's a profoundly overwhelming question, because even some of us who are old or middle-aged, or we should have figured something out, like, we're still going through whatever it is we're going through. And I think it's a rites of passage. I believe in structure and routine and discipline. I believe those are great tools to survive life. They certainly provide for a much more manageable existence, if balanced correctly. But at some points in your life, they're off balance, like tremendously off fucking balance. You're, sleeping on a friend's couch, or worse than that, you're sleeping out under a bus stop. I don't know. But, you are the person who gets to make that choice. And I think it's really up to other people how much they want to invest themselves in your journey. And we need those too. We need people who want to lend a hand, lend money, lend space, lend, we need those resources to know what it's worth in our relationships. And, we try to actualize that exchange with words, but it's one of those things, when you tell a 20-something-year-old or even a teenager, this is what's going to happen if you continue down that path. And they look at you like an animal like a dog looking at a person, trying to talk to them. It's the same concept. It's like you're trying to yell from another realm, and they don't have the growth to really internalize it, because that's what you want for them. When you boust out some wisdom for whatever, by your own proclivity to help somebody, you spew this out and they don't take it in, and you see it deflect, and you don't know what to do. I get that part. You're a little bewildered, but that's also your decision to wise up. Wise up. Let them be. Let life teach them. Now, mind you, this is easier said than done, especially if the person who is struggling and looking for help is deeply involved in some terrible, terrible decisions and their outcomes. As this is offensive to everybody that comes in contact with them. We don't want to get cut or bruised or lose our lives. Those are obvious side effects that we steer away from. What am I getting at? Well, this is a brain dump, so I don't have to be so structured, but for the sake of feedback, especially if it's to learn something about myself, I just think there's a lot of yelling and advertising. We're all taught to advertise. That's what we're doing. When we talk to each other, well, I think, the thing is, have you ever heard of Peterson, I want to do that too. I want to do that as well. I suppose I'm doing that right now. If I even put this out there for anybody else to hear, it then becomes a broadcast of what's in my head. And look, I want to be deliberate in saying I don't expect anybody to change on behalf of me. And I'm making a face where I kind of doubt what I just said to be true. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that my words resonate with people in a manner that makes their lives better, in any capacity, in any way. If my connection to you through this collection of information in Robert Michael Haley's head lands somewhere inside you, I think I've done the best I can do. I find myself having to coach my orientation to success in a different direction. Because when I think of success, I can't help it. Dollar signs pop up in my head. Nice cars pop up in my vision sometimes. I daydream about a big house. I daydream about nice landscaping. I daydream about living in a nice neighborhood, gated community, kids safe. He's not wildly an asshole, but he dabbles. I mean, he's got to get his nicks in too, He's got to get his punches. And I got beat down. I've been beat down, and it woke my ass up. I truly believe that every once in a while, nature is going to smack you in the face if you defy her wildly enough. She will smack you in the face. Mine was a punch in the side of the head, but I deserved it. I deserved to be smacked around in that moment. Probably worse than had happened. It was literally done only to humiliate me, not to hurt me. I mean, they wanted to get a few funny punches in, and it worked. But it was to humble me. And I get it. Looking back, at that time in my life, I was 18, maybe 19, and I barked off a bunch of dumb things that I thought I should be saying at the time. I don't know why. This was early in alcohol consumption, and God forbid my son does the things that I had done at that age, but man, life smacked me around good, and I woke up, and I'll tell you, I know exactly what happened. Is I was running around at that time in my life with a group of guys that represented masculinity in a way that I had only hoped and wished for in high school. I wasn't that. I was an ROTC kid, a fat, high-water pants wearing ROTC kid. I was a Boy Scout in the Air Force. I hung out with law enforcement in the Air Force. I've been on the job as a volunteer police officer as a teenager between the ages of 15 and 16. Did it for about a year and a half or so. And I stood at the front gate of the Air Force Base, and if it was an officer, I could see the decal on their car, which let them onto the base. There'd be a colored part of the decal, it'd be dark blue, like navy blue. And if I had a navy blue portion of their sticker, that was an officer. And I had to salute officers. It was official. It was official. I'm sure there were other scouts like myself who challenged that tradition, but I was always like hip to do it. I felt so damn proud. I always looked up to officers, It's what we're taught in the military. Do you know why? And I never really talked about this before, but when you live on a military base, there is a cultural divide between the officers and the enlisted. The officers get special treatment, which is, now that I'm thinking about it, it's a little backwards in the new world. But maybe it's still worth something. But you go to a base, there's the NCO club, which is for the enlisted. I think it's the NCO club. No, sorry. Yeah, non-commissioned officers club. That's for the enlisted, the sergeants, the airmen, the staff sergeants, master sergeant, chief master sergeant, all these grades. And then you have the officers club. And just the atmosphere of these two different places would establish, sort of the ambiance of royalty. That's how it was kind of treated. They were the upper echelon of the personnel manning the military. They were the people who continued their education to get that extra mile degree. The doctors, the lawyers, some of the managers, nurses. Every profession that on the outside world requires long education. And that's what it was, is that these people, they put the time in to getting their education, getting their certifications, and applying it on a military job. When you made friends with officers' kids, you always knew the difference. Officers' kids, they were like middle-class civilians, And honestly, enlisted, a lot of motherfucking enlisted were broke as fuck. I'm talking like eggs and rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Broke as fuck, and their house fucking stank. If they were shitty, stanky-ass people before they got in the military, they were just shitty, stanky-ass people in the military at times. I'm not saying that discipline doesn't change your life. It surely does. But some people are beyond conventional help. So be it. If it's only for variety and diversity, we got a fucking mouthful of it. It was amazing. It was an amazing childhood. And as I'm thinking about it now, the whole thing about leadership and how officers and enlisted were culturally different in the military, the officers got that special treatment, whereas I think enlisted maybe should have gotten the special treatment. With the New Day and age version of leadership. John Maxwell, Simon Sinek, these people who make it a lifelong pursuit to teach leadership. I believe that the royal treatment that leadership had gotten should probably go to... But see, now as I'm describing that, I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. It's hard to figure this stuff out. You know, it gets tricky. It gets tricky because you just keep digging. It's like I haven't even seen the whole movie, but there's a movie called Holes, and they dig a bunch of holes, and it's kind of like that, where you're just out digging holes. And if you could visualize an open field where there's, you know, soft soil, hard soil, and you get to pick where you want to dig. That's what we do with our damn cultural, pop culture information. TMZ. Why is something like that popular? They're literally gossip queens. You know what's really fucked up? People say, I've heard people say, I'm not really the gossip type. I don't like to gossip. Oh my God, they're gossiping. Like those type of people. I love gossip. I love gossip. I don't like being mean or malicious or vindictive or manipulative. I don't like being any of those things, but I love gossip. I love to know what's going on in people's lives. I do. I think it's like, it's the truth, you know? And I just, it's bizarre how we all try to hide from each other. I think that's bizarre. I don't think it's fair. I think, you know, if we're out here in the world saying, hey man, people are going through shit. Well, fucking tell me about it. What are you going through? I don't know. I'm spoiled. Maybe that's it. I talk a lot of shit because I'm spoiled. I'm spoiled. Or maybe I earned it. Yeah, maybe I did. I damn sure did. This was fun. This was good. I think the whole Air Force thing, I loved it, though. I loved being a kid on a military base as a military dependent. I felt secure in a lot of ways. You know, and some of us kids, we got to live in housing developments that were specific to military and were fenced off to the outside world. Literally a perimeter of fencing with barbed wire was wrapped around the housing development. Because, you know, you drive up to a new development, it's like it's all open, you know, you're connected to other neighborhoods. Not like that. This had fences and barbed wire and a gate with a shack manned by 2 military police officers. And the only way to get into this housing development was either A, provide a military ID card or military credentials, and possibly even having to say where you're going, especially if it's like officers' housing. Anyways, like that's what I lived in for a long portion of my childhood, was a gated community, gated and protected. Talk about privilege. I think that's what they mean. Like I'm sheltered. I'm a sheltered, spoiled child. And I'm putting on a podcast because I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. Look, I know I'm spoiled. I do. But, you know, sometimes when you sit there and say, it could be worse, you could be dying of starvation in Africa. Well, yeah, that's what's going on, I think. That's what people are saying. It's happening. And I'm glad it's not me. And I'm sorry for whoever's going through it. But my problems seem real to me, you know? And other people's problems seem real to them. And I get it. Like, sometimes I'll hear about somebody's situation and I'm like, oh my God, 20-year-olds. Like, I say dumb shit like that. I say it all the time and I'm an idiot for it. Truly. But that's what we do, right? I forgive myself. for being so narrow-minded and so lucky to have a privileged life. I'm glad that my parents, they became my parents. They kept me safe in a lifestyle that is never fleeting. I am a military brat and always will be till I'm dying old and gray. And I'll relish that, as I'm sure most others do. Yeah, it's been quite an existence. Quite an existence. Lately, I feel like I can dip my feet into this metaphysical pool of information. It's like somewhere between sleep and consciousness. Yeah, it's like I'm tuning into a channel and I can hear wisdom. Sometimes I get something so profound, and then I'll tell myself in my sleep state to get up and write it down before it goes away. And then I just don't sometimes. It's a discipline that I am struggling with. But I'm not saying that I have ESP or I'm enlightened or I'm not saying anything magical, although it feels that way. It feels surreal, which doesn't seem to eliminate any of my other damaging habits. It just doesn't. Bizarre that way. Like whatever. This is going to be classically an excuse, but whatever programming I have is really difficult to reprogram on my own. And I have every means and resource to do everything needed. And yet, I persist. Not sure what that is. My closest of friends, my greatest of friends, we all discuss this. It's the age-old song that Robert Michael Haley says or sings. I sing this song. I've sung it my whole life. Excuse me. But my sheep... That's a terrible analogy, but all the songs I sing, I'm so sick of them. It's like when you work in a market or some sort of a facility where they play music, the same music all day, every day. It's mind-numbing. I was going to join the military out of high school when I was a Boy Scout in the Air Force. By the way, those are called police explorers. And we get the uniform, we can wear gun belts, we get to play war with the military, we get to go out and shoot blanks, we get to learn how to train German Shepherds, canines. We went on a field trip to Lackland Air Force Base, where the basic training camp is. We went through a portion of the obstacle course, and I inevitably was just fat boy in that thing all the way through. Man, what a silly time of my life. Putting on these tight-ass uniforms and flopping around this obstacle course, and all the while wondering what the hell is going on. Oh, man, I was obnoxiously awkward. I had, if I didn't wear the right underwear, I'd get a rash in my legs. And I don't care how embarrassing it is. It was just like, damn, what kind of card game are we playing? And then you add sexuality to that. Oh my God, what the fuck do you people want? It's crazy. It was crazy trying to figure this shit out. And then God gave me a stepbrother. At some point in my early adolescence, I got a stepbrother who was a teenager. He was a professional teenager, badass, rule breaker. He was as good as the worst of them. Justin. That was his name. But he was such a badass, it made me feel cool. I felt cool to have a badass stepbrother. I'll never forget it, man. I was going to junior high in Antelope, California. Center Junior High. I was new to this junior high. I went to the elementary just down the road, Dudley Elementary. And the first few weeks of 1 year at this school, there were people being jumped and beaten by gangs of people. Not like Crips and Bloods, but just gangs of angry-ass teenagers. And here's something to think about, too. It's like all the crazy shit you think kids are doing nowadays, they've always been doing this. I'm telling you, the human species is a fucking mess. We still got a long ways to go. Anyways, first few weeks of school, kids were being followed on their way home, targeted, and then jumped by a squad of 20 to 30, I don't know, somewhere in the double digits. These kids were ganging up on people. And one day, they caught up with this young boy who I knew to be a loudmouth, back-talking, not easy to get along with guy. And I think his name was Ian, if my memory serves me correct. His name was Ian. These little black girls were running up to Ian ahead of a crowd, and they were talking shit to him, or trying to get him to talk shit. And it was just a bunch of shit talking for a minute. And then at some point, because I don't remember how it all transpired, but at some point I remember looking over there. This was right by Dudley Elementary. It was right outside. And it was after school hours. So there were teachers in there, but they didn't know what was going on. This crowd finally caught up with this young man, and I looked over there, and he was being stomped on, he was being kicked, he was being spit on, he was being punched. Anything you would imagine an angry mob doing, it was being done to Ian. Turned out that, now this is just what I heard, but I don't doubt it, but he had to have his jaw wired shut, and by the time they were kicking in those last few hits on him, he was having seizures. And turns out they fucked him up really good. And I'm sorry to say, probably permanently in some ways. Had to have been. If it was traumatizing enough for me to remember, had to have been a million times worse for him. Prayer for Ian. I hope his life turned out good. I hope he's happy. I hope all good things are happening to Ian. Just a little side thought there. Now, I don't remember how much longer after that my turn came around. But I knew it was coming. I was just another fat kid, vulnerable, like a mouse out in an open field to an eagle. That's what I was like to this angry mob. And I got up to maybe like an eighth of a mile from the school. And the way this school is we're on a public road alongside the side of this school. And you can imagine a bunch of portables to the left of me, hallways going down long buildings of classroom after classroom after classroom, leading to a blacktop with basketball courts and an open field. There were about 3 or 4 major hallways going down each row of classrooms. I made it into the first one, right off of this road to the left. I almost got stopped by the car that was parked right by that little hallway. I got pushed by one of these kids, and I shoved him as hard as I could back in the other direction. And I ran down that hall till I saw a teacher. And sure enough, I went into a classroom, and there was a teacher. Some kids were out there looking at me through the glass. I don't know what they were doing, but I was just like, oh, God, help me. That teacher took me to the front office of Dudley Elementary. She let me use the phone, calm down. I think I called my stepmom, I called my dad. I don't know who I called. But eventually I was given a ride home by this lady similar to what my son had been going through. And later on that day, I'm out with my stepmom, and my brother, and we see one of the kids who was one of the lead bullies in that gang. I see him walking down the street, and mind you, this is just a scrawny little white kid who looked really tough in front of 30 or 40 other kids. So I told my stepmom, pull over, that's him. And my brother's like, that's him. And we pull over up next to this kid, and I jump out. My stepmom stays in the car. My brother pops his head up. I'm like, hey, bitch, what are you going to do now? I literally am like, I'm ready to just like take everything out on this kid. And he is acting like he had never seen me before. I've seen this look recently on some bullies that were messing with my son. But he looked like, I don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't me. Oh, it was him. It was damn show him. But I didn't lay a finger on him. I just wanted to scare him. I just wanted to make him feel how I felt at that moment when a gang of people almost put me into a fucking metal jaw and seizures, and I wasn't about to go down that road. This was a story of survival from humankind. I carry this memory with me as a reminder that people are animals, man. You know, and we put our expectations on kids and young adults who have no fucking clue what to do. Do you know why? Because all the adults, all the guardians of their world have no fucking idea what to do either. Listen, we have some good ideas. We have some collectively unifying, profoundly progressive, positive ideas that we can maximize through agreement. I at times feel crazy. I feel isolated. And it's scary. Thinking, why don't more people give a shit about other people? And I'm not saying that to cast anybody as a bad guy. I'm not. Listen, look, folks. I am your species. I am human. Hear me roar. We can make this work. All the devastation in history happened to all of us. All of us are connected. Do you know why America is so controversial? Because America is where survivors go. That's where survivors go. We are here from different paintings of the planet. We've seen things differently. This can be made of value, or this can be made into some huge misunderstanding. Get it together. Friends of friends, families, friends of families, all you fantastic human beings. Love yourself. Love anything and everything. Just try to breathe in the things you love. Try to breathe those in deeper than the things you don't love. Because everything is here, but so are you. You are here too. And if you ever need anything, ask me, and I'll help you. This is my offer to help the solution. Ask me for help, and I'll try to help you. Ask and you shall receive, right? The good Lord's going to challenge me yet again. But you know what? I accept it. I accept the challenge. I get what I ask for, right? And I'm asking for a world where my little boy can watch me die in my sleep, old in age, with children and grandchildren in the picture, relationships all lived out to the max, in a beautiful, perfect world where everyone is there for each other throughout their entire experience in this life. I pray for that. I pray for that for everybody. I pray a life of connection, love, and belonging, and deep breaths of air. Thank you.